Fiona Scott, Darren Barnett. Great to see you both. Fiona, your former colleague Peter Dutton, he's really had a crack at Anthony Albanese again today, saying that he's dropped the ball on anti-Semitism, that he should have confronted it earlier, and now it's escalated, and the police foiling this terror plot in Sydney. Yeah, look, Peter Dutton's 100% correct in this. I mean, he and his Foreign Affairs Minister, Penny Wong, they've just been inconsistent on this. They've seen some of the challenges that we've seen in the Middle East and what's happened with Israel and all of that stuff over the last couple of years, and not been consistent, not been firm enough. You know, at the end of the day, no form of racism is acceptable in Australia, and challenges going on in other parts of the world don't belong here either. And you know, Peter Dutton is correct, and it's why we do need to have consistent lines in this sort of space, and allowing these behaviours and thoughts and sentiments to stay within the community is not in line with the broader feelings of most Australians. So, you know, I fully support what Peter has said today, and, you know, hopefully we can find a way forward. And, you know, concerns like what's happened in Bowra with the suburbs, right? Dural. I'm thinking North Sydney, but you know, with those sorts of issues, I mean, we just don't. This is not the country we love, and this is not what we want it to be, and it's just not Australian. Well, Darren, that's absolutely right, and this the police thankfully have got people in custody, and those explosives have been detected, but if it were to be carried out, Peter Dutton says it would have been potentially one of the, if not the largest terrorist attack in Australian history, if that threat was carried out. So we're not just talking about graffiti anymore.
No, but let's be thankful that it was averted, that it was found before anything had happened that would escalate it to that point of being an awful terrorist attack. In many ways, it shows the system's working, that intelligence, police, others, that they were able to detect, they were able to prevent this occurring, and that therefore we need to just remain vigilant, and the system is working. But remain vigilant that if these types of attacks, if there are people in Australia who are prepared to plan and potentially carry out these types of things, we need to all redouble our efforts and make sure that those sorts of things are not allowed to germinate, that they are not allowed to be planned, they're not allowed to be taken out. So, look, it's one of those awful things, but thankfully the crisis was averted.
We obviously the Prime Minister will be asked about this issue shortly when he holds a news conference with the Victorian Premier. I want to ask you both about the other story this week. That's the inflation number. Darren, I'll go first to you on this one. How significant will it be if the RBA does move and cut rates in February and potentially April ahead of a April or May election?
Oh, it's incredibly significant. I think that's what government strategists have been hoping for quite some time, that one or two rate cuts before the election greatly increases Labor's chances of being in government after the election, which will be either in April or May. So obviously there's a lot riding on it, and if there can be two rate cuts, that would be incredible. More likely there will be one, potentially there will be none, but that certainly, it greatly bolsters the government's chances, because they can then point to some actual relief when it comes to cost of living pressure, which we all know is the number one issue for this election.
It is indeed. There have been a dozen rate rises, but Fiona, the psychology of this, the message that the worst is past, and that if there's one, there's potentially 3, 4 rate cuts to come. So is that a powerful political argument for the government to have, or as the Prime Minister said last election, is this the wind in their sails, or kicking with the wind, as he said, in the final quarter?
Yeah, look, it will be very significant for the Prime Minister, but I mean, it's remarkable the work that Peter Dutton and the team have done, the fact that the Liberal Party, the Coalition, the National Party as well, are in the position that they are this time around. I mean, that does come down to consistently almost 3 years of really bad management. And the fact that the RBA has stayed so sticky for so long with these interest rates, I mean, it is relief that we need. But when you look more broadly at the cost of living pressures, I mean, it might be 0.25%, that's great news. But by the time that'll take to flow through the economy, that people will feel it when they're in the checkouts and, you know, buying their groceries for the kids and the family and putting the food on the table. I mean, you'll have to see the money back in your bank account to know what the rest of that's going to be, and for business to also start feeling the relief. And I think for the Prime Minister, that's not going to happen soon enough. And the pain that Australians have felt for so long has not happened soon enough. And the concern is also, I mean, does that mean the economy is also coming off the boil? What does that mean also for job security? So it's fantastic news, and it would be great news for all Australians struggling with cost of living, that, as Darren said, it is the number one issue being felt by all Australians right now. But, you know, maybe it's just that little bit too late, and Labor have just been too slow out of the box getting on top of, you know, the issues with the economy, in particular inflation and the interest rate.
Darren, do you think the budget, Fiona and I were talking before we came on air about this, but is there a scenario here where you look at this, the data, to interest rate to decisions before the election, potentially a budget March 25 where the government gets to put cost of living again front and centre, but they'd have to walk that delicate tightrope when it comes to spending if they wanted another rate cut on April the 1st ahead of the election?
Look, I would be surprised if we go to the election before April 12. I don't know. I'm not in the Prime Minister's office, but that to me seems the most likely date for a bunch of reasons. I think the rate cuts send a message
that means
that
no budget if it
the
was
worst
April
is
12.
behind us.
But if you said
That's
April
correct.
12, that means no
and
budget.
I think that
I'm suggesting that they could go to the budget and say, OK, the focus is, we've got our focus on the economy. And with Jim Chalmers, their best communicator, putting him back up in front of the cameras.
Look, they will make their decision according to when they think they can win and whatever message they think will be the most resonant with the most number of Australian voters. So I have no problem if Jim is front and centre. I think he's got a good story to tell. Equally, if it happens slightly before a budget, I think the rate cuts are the signal that people will take big notice of, more so than what might be contained in the budget itself. I think that will just signal to people in the community that the worst is behind us, and therefore we have better times to look forward to. And as we all know, federal elections are all about selling that vision for the future. If people think it's going to be a bit less pressure, they are more likely to vote for the government of the day.
Darren's right, that rate question is going to be so pivotal for many people as they're just waiting for some respite on that front. A senior Labor person said to me this week, though, that if they do go to the budget and wait, that it gives them more time as well to chip away at Peter Dutton with the glare of election year upon him now. Because previously, Fiona, opposition leaders, they don't always get as much attention. A couple of months out from an election, they do. And that's where the scrutiny really starts to ramp up.
Yeah, look, I can appreciate why Labor might have that feeling and that thought, but Peter Dutton's it is his first rodeo going to the election as a leader, but it's not his first rodeo of the cycle. And he's also had very high-powered, high-profile portfolios in the past where he's been put under pressure. I don't think he's the sort of man that will buckle, and he's a man that's been very consistent. I think Peter Dutton has taken some really tough portfolios in the past where he's had to, keep Australia safe and keep Australians safe. And, his long-term career over a very long period of time of serving the Australian public, it's not like he's somebody that the Australian public don't know. And so I think in many ways that sense on Peter could be somewhat flawed, because the man I've known for a long time from being in Parliament with, he's taken strong portfolios because of his background of being a police officer and knowing how important it is to keep Australians safe. And if that means you need to be tough, you be tough because you're going to make sure people smugglers don't get in. You're going to make sure people don't do wrong things to hurt other people. And if he has to be tough to do that, Peter is. But now people are starting to get to know the Peter Dutton that people like myself have worked with and known for a decade, and actually seeing, you know, the man behind all of that and the actual why he has fought so hard over a long period of time. So if Labor want to take more time to get to know Peter Dutton, then I simply say bring it on. They'll get to know who Peter Dutton is. I think if they do go in May, I agree with you, Kieran. I think that is a real chance. I think Anthony Albanese also, like many Prime Ministers before him, will like trying to pack in a few of those extra public holidays like Anzac Day and Easter into the election period.
Yeah, that's true as well. Fiona, Darren, great to see you both. We'll catch you next week.